So tell us a bit about how you got into photography. When did you discover that this was a talent that you possessed?
I started practicing photography when I was about 13 and 14 years old. That was around eighth or ninth grade. I was, as a student, we were allowed to take these like electives basically. So there were different art electives, and photography was one of them. There was like printmaking, like sculpture and stuff like that. So yeah, photo really stuck with me as an eighth grader, and then I went on to do it for the rest of high school, and did honors photo in my senior year, and yeah, kind of the rest was kind of history from there.
Pursuing a career in the arts is often seen as risky. Where did you find the inspiration and the courage to turn your creative talent of photography into your actual career?
Um, I definitely think it came from just seeing beautiful work. At the time, Tumblr was a really big resource for me. Just seeing people be creative, seeing people use their environments and their tools to like make stuff that really inspired me and that I really felt. And in so many levels, it was a pretty much purely visual platform with just like seeing things just being curated well that resonated with me, just really spoke to how powerful good work could be. So I kind of started to do that on my own. I kind of started to create on my own. And that's how I think all artists really should go into anything, just making sure that they're looking and seeing and feeling what it is that resonates with them creatively, and then taking that like step of finding the resources they need to create their own stuff. And I feel like it was really organic though. Like I definitely was like in school learning photography at the same time I was like obsessed with Tumblr. So it really like subconsciously they really fed each other.
So you're also a figure skater. And a few years ago, you had this amazing opportunity to appear in the music video titled All the Way Up with Fat Joe and Remy Ma. And there's this amazing lesson that can be gained from how you leverage that experience early on in your career. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
First, yes, I was a figure skater for about 11 years. I started off in the first grade. My parents put me in a program called Figure Skating in Harlem, which is an amazing organization that's been around for over 2 decades. And honestly, the purpose of it is to just inspire young people of color, young women of color, to have access to the sport, where we normally like don't like we usually don't see that representation. So that was my first passion.
Mhm.
And then as I got older, once I kind of graduated from high school, you sort of like commenced out the program, but I still obviously had those skills, right? And like was like muscle memory was totally there. And when I was in college, my friend who was working as an alum or on the alum team as a coordinator of sorts at the organization reached out to me, and she said, "Hey, like they get really cool inquiries and press stuff all the time, and this was one of the ones that they got. Remy Ma and Fat Joe were in this video for a song called All the Way Up, which went on to be like a really big record, and they wanted to film um, like someone's creative direction was to have like women of color skating on synthetic ice at a club." And so I like came on and I was there to like be in the video, but it was 2016, my first time being around celebrities, first time being on like a video set. And so I was like, well, this would be really good for my portfolio. And I remember it was like my first day of my spring semester, my junior year, and I was like, I'll just go here, like, make my little $150 and like go to class. And I ended up being on set the whole day. And as I know now, years later, like video sets are always way longer than people project for them to be. Well, not always, but usually are. So for me, it was just having my camera and just kind of being a fly on the wall. I always loved street photography. That's what I actually focused on a lot of when I was in school. I consider myself a photographer, a portrait photographer, and a photojournalist. So even when I was learning the craft, I was shooting 35 millimeter film, like black and white, but the pictures I was taking like in Harlem and around Harlem were very much like this kind of reportage style. So that's kind of what I did. So it wasn't like, I was like, hey, like Remy Ma, stand over here, Fat Joe, stand over here. I was just sort of like in the cut, like when I was off camera. And it wasn't like I was on camera like that much, honestly. Like I did my little cameo part, did my little skating part. Fat Joe like directed me, and that was so interesting. But after that, I kind of just was shooting like the scenes and the situations that I was seeing that I thought were beautiful, and like all the lights and the cameras and the crew. And then I went on to share that work with the producer and the director and like the directors, or like the cinematography team and like the hairstylist. I just like kind of sent it out and like hoped that someone would like it. And the producer got back to me and was like, hey, like I think your work is really dope. And he connected me with someone who works at Atlantic Records, who went on to be like a big like mentor of mine, and the person who allowed me to first work with their label very closely, with Gucci Mane very closely, and with Cardi really closely. And I still like have a good relationship with them to this day. But that's sort of like the backwards way that my career kind of started.
That's such an amazing story because it shows how much of a natural entrepreneur you are. You were invited to be featured in this video, but you took the initiative to bring your camera and take behind the scenes photos and took the extra step to use those to sort out further opportunities that have become such a foundational part of everything that you've done up to this point in your career.
Yeah, honestly. You have to, I think, especially living in New York City. I was so grateful for it because I'd previously gone to a school upstate and it was cool. But like when I came back, I remember I was sort of like sulking the fact that I wasn't having this like, like this typical college experience where I got to like live off, live on a campus, live away from home. But then like hindsight is obviously 2020, of course. So like now I'm like, wow, like coming back to New York, literally that changed a lot for me. And like I think if I was going to end up like being a photographer, that would have happened anyway. But I kind of think that story, and the way it happened is, like you said, sort of organic and like really, really beautiful in its own right. So yeah.
So there's another lesson that we can pull from that as well. This importance of being able to leverage networks and also the benefits that can come from partnering with larger organizations. You actually partnered with a record label to get that opportunity that you have to become Cardi B's personal photographer, which is major. Tell us a bit more about what that experience is like. What is it like shooting behind the scenes for such a major celebrity?
It's amazing. I think that like I would be shooting, like I would be photographing whether it was Cardi B or Cardi D or Cardi whoever, like, and like the fact that she was able to take her platform and like, do what she did with her career and become so popular and well known. And then for me to be able to have that kind of visibility of my work is like such a perfect alignment for me, honestly. Like regardless of who the person was that I would be shooting, I would have like, I'd still be doing what I would be doing. But like I'm so grateful that it's someone like her, one, because like she's just so iconic,
Mhm.
and then two, because like, as I've gotten to know her team, like it's become like honestly like family, like working with like the people who I've come to know over the past 3 years. And then again, it's just like you always want your work to be seen at like the highest levels that it can be. And
Right.
because we live in this age, in this day and age where social media is so big and we're viral culture is like such a thing. It's been really, it's like the perfect, for me at least, I see it as like the perfect photographer situation. But yeah, that's so it's so humbling, it's so awesome. And I think that, I look at my archive of images I've had of her, dating back to 2017, and I think that like, the different kinds of ways I've captured her. She has such a crazy life and does so
Mhm.
much. But the times where I've been invited to capture her at the Met Gala, or her like on video sets, or her, at award shows. I look at them and I'm like, wow, like this is like I don't think I can look at anyone else's documentation of this person and see that. And so it's sort of like trippy because there's a part of me that's like, okay, this is my work. Like I was there, I took these pictures, like I experienced these things, and the part of me that's like looks at it like almost objectively and sees it as like just this body of work that's really cool, but like to attribute it to myself, it's like, I don't know, it's like, wow, I did that. And then also like, wow, that's a really great thing. And that's my thing. Like I created those. So
Yeah.
it's like kind of it's interesting. Even like when I see pictures come up online or like see stuff and people will be like, wow, like this is so cool. And I don't know, it's like I still see it as just like beautiful photography first and foremost. But obviously the person and the content and the person who's in the pictures makes it like so much more valuable, especially at this time, like in the world, in life, you know. So I, like I said before, it's just really cool. It's such a blessing, and that's not necessarily what I thought would happen when I was like on that set like 4 years ago. But I think when you're steadfast and when you're doing what you love and when you're like aligning yourself and honestly just being ready, I think timing is really important. People will often be like, you know, how do I start working with celebrities or how do I start doing this? And like,
Mhm.
I would never necessarily like sought that out. Like that wasn't my goal, but you know, I knew my craft and I knew it really well. And so the right person saw it. And I think that's always what's gonna happen. Like if you're doing a good job, like people who are meant to see your stuff will see your stuff. And it's just a matter of like putting you in the right rooms and who you know and really literally timing makes all the difference. So
Um, so is there a favorite, or what's your favorite or most iconic moment that you've had like working with Cardi?
I would say probably like Met Gala.
I love that one too.
Yeah,
That's my favorite one.
I think I photographed her in 2018 and 2019. So when she was pregnant one year, and then in the following year, it was like her return. And she had this beautiful like berry red like dress, and I think some of the photos I've taken of her from that night feel like super iconic to me. And just like really larger than life because the dress was huge. It had like thousands of, excuse me, like beads and like tulle and like all these feathers and stuff. So those just feel like really like huge moments. But then I think for me, what's been kind of also special is like looking back at the pictures I took of her, like when she was like pregnant. I took a few on like on the set for the video for Be Careful, and that was like in the desert in the church that they shot, like in the church that they shot Kill Bill. Those feel really delicate and really special, and really like they really represent a time in her life. And I think that those are really special to me just because it's just like she'll be famous for the rest of her life and she's been famous for years now. But like those 9 months out of like pregnancy to any woman really is super sacred. So to be able to capture some of that for her, I think that feels like the most special work I've done as well. So yeah, I kind of met and kind of like some of her pregnancy images or some of her images when she was pregnant.
Amazing. And this is such a huge milestone for you and it would be for anyone. You actually had your work featured on the cover of the New York Times, which is
Yeah.
it's a full circle moment as well because the story featured images of girls who are a part of the figure skating in Harlem program, which you were a part of when you were younger. How did that opportunity actually come about?
Yeah, so ironically enough, like it kind of stemmed from a Cardi thing. It started off in 2017. I was in Miami to shoot my first time working with her, but I was and my first time being like flued out and stuff too. So I'm again so grateful for like my like big sis basically who like has put me in the rooms to like do this work. She had me down there. I was capturing Cardi's first, I think, like television performance of Bodak Yellow, and it was like her first big award show as well. So this was like October 2017. At the same time, Carnival happens down in Miami. So I, again, being someone who's like a photojournalist and like who loves like street photography and just visually like the idea of Carnival is crazy. Just like you never see that mass of literally mass, like with that amount of people and that amount of like beautiful, you know, colors and like that celebration of culture, especially Black people. It's just visually such a sight for me. It's called Miami Broward Carnival. It's like the biggest North American one, like because you know they have they'll have like different celebrations in like different parts of the country and around the world. They do Brazil and like London and obviously like all parts of the Caribbean, New York. We have like Labor Day parade and everything. But in Miami, it's the biggest celebration in North America, especially because it's kind of like the closest to the Caribbean. So there's a lot of like representation down there of like the different countries within the Caribbean. So a lot of people flock there and just really go in. I went back in 2018. I like was by myself and I was just like, let me just hang out and capture what I want to capture. I decided to pitch the story to the New York Times, and the editor who I had got the contact of and reached out to was like, this isn't necessarily like something that we were gonna that we would that I would run.
Mhm.
But I love your work and I would like to get to know you. And so she invited me in and um we spoke for 2 hours and I remember I was so emotional and excited because just like walking into the New York Times building was like, oh my God, like it was crazy. And like I felt so just like even now just talking about it like gives me like chills. It was just such a moment. I didn't know like that what came of it was gonna come of it, but I was excited to just be having a conversation. So we spoke for like 2 hours just about everything, and she's amazing. Her name is Eve Leones, and she's super iconic to me as well. She's so tapped into like the young talent world and just like the talent world in general. And so I sat with her in this like yellow booth. She like would take these pictures of all the artists that would visit her, and she would call it like the Yellow Booth series. And I, was asked about different things and she put me on her Instagram and I was like, oh my God. And it was just like, it was so cool. And I had a picture of like the Miami work that I had just came back from doing. And then she talked about this column she had called The Look, which was about different subcultures in the country and I think in the world. And so she asked if I knew about any subcultures. And I told her that like where I'm from, Harlem, there was like a group of like black women and like, Latina women who like were ice skaters, and she was really blown away by that and was pretty much like sold on the idea of capturing that right away. And so kind of like the work just really started from there. I connected with my skating organization and like the same people, still knew me and like worked there, but there was also a lot of new faces. I got to go back and like I bought skates and was on the ice and I got to just kind of be the fly on the wall for about a couple weeks, going here and there. And the story kind of started to shape itself. And then eventually, she was giving me feedback. And when it ran, uh, the way that they do it is like the stories that are on the cover, they'll have like a editor's team or like a staff meeting where they like will pick the images that like make the cut for the cover. So I already was just excited that it was going to be in the New York Times in the first place. Like I knew it was going to be in print. That was exciting. It ended up being like a full page in print because it was like about like I would say like 10 to 15 images that they ran in the print issue. So the Times is like so big. So I already knew that was gonna like be so exciting for me. But then when one of the images were selected to also be in that editor's cut on the cover, it really blew me away. And it made me cry and like there's a great video of me like freaking out about it. But the image they used in the cover was so special. And it was a picture of all the skates lined up next to the boards, and that was one of the days that they were competing in Connecticut. So I'd gone with them on the bus to Connecticut, and um, yeah, I'd gone with them on the bus to Connecticut. I had like ridden with them, and it was also so nostalgic because when I was a skater, like I did the same thing. Like we would got on the bus and went to our like synchro competitions. So it just felt so like ordained and like really where I was supposed to be. And so when that came out, it just really was like such a day. And I was again just like so happy. Like it was crazy. Like I don't know. I had to walk all the way down to like 96th Street to even get a copy of the Times. I couldn't find like the issue, like the right one. But that was awesome. The cover of there's an early edition of the Times and a late edition. So the early edition, which is like the first edition that goes out, the national one, it was on the cover of that one, which is really, really cool. So
So, as I'm listening to your story, it's so inspiring to see how all of these connections and relationships that you've nurtured have organically led from one amazing opportunity to the next. And these aren't planned, they're just organically manifesting based off of these relationships and your ability to continuously produce impeccable work.
And I think that's a big part of it. People want to help people that they believe in, that they're inspired by, and that they feel like a good vibe from. And so I'm not going into situations like, like harassing people over email or like doing too much. I do believe that you have to be tactful and like strategic in the ways that you maneuver the world. And I think that one of the reasons why I even got into photography was because I've always been a people person. Like I'm super talkative. I've always like been really bubbly, talk really fast, I had a lot going on. And I think that people, I'm 25 now, but like even when I was like 5 and
So young.
15, yeah, thanks. When I was 5 and 15 and younger, like, all my life, it's been that same energy. I think I've really kind of started to attract, or I've found a way to attract the right, like you said, the right people. And people will speak to me and just want like and want that. And then it becomes a domino effect of like, oh, Carly, do you know someone who's like available to do this? Like, oh yeah, I know this girl. And like, oh, Flo, I got your number from this person, or I got your contact from this person. And so now I think I'm really like knee deep in that like domino effect of just contacts and networks. And because the work is there, it's
Mhm.
sort of like a really easy, you know, um, everything is kind of like the hard part is sort of done, I think. And I'm really grateful for that. I feel like now it's just sort of like being consistent, being steadfast, being, like I said, strategic, like, knowing when to say yes, knowing when to say no, like not doing everything. That's something I've struggled with as well. But,
Mhm.
one day at a time, one assignment at a time, I should say.
Yes, and I guess that's natural when you're starting out. You are trying to decipher what to say yes to and what to say no to. Now that you have this amazing body of work in your portfolio, do you see your craft starting to transition? Or what types of work do you find yourself gravitating towards? What do you prefer to shoot or to work on now?
Yeah, definitely like reportage, like documentary work, like photojournalism. I'm so moved by it. Like Magnum photographers have always been like the epitome of like great work to me. And that's what I've always been really inspired by. And just this ability to I appreciate and love like studio work and abstract work and still lifes and everything. But I think that like for me, fundamentally, the way that photography works really is a documentation of like life, right? And not to get too like philosophical about it, but if you really think about the way that images have served you
Mhm.
or any of us, like from the time we're born, like we wouldn't even know how we looked like at a younger age. We wouldn't know how our parents look. We wouldn't know how people who we've never met looked. We wouldn't know anything about a lot of things if it wasn't for like an image. And so now, um, to answer your question, yeah, that's what I would love to do. Like, sadly, like one of my big goals was to travel more, and do more documentary work like in the world. Obviously because of Corona, that's like stifled the things a bit, but that's what I would love to do. And then portrait photography as well. Like I love people, I love talking to people. I love like kind of studying people. And I was talking to someone recently, and yeah, I think that like as a photographer, your job kind of becomes like, I stare at faces all day and like then I stare at them on my computer when I get home when I'm editing and stuff. And I think that like the ways that I've intuitively begun to understand people's expressions and mannerisms and like what it says about a person and like what that energy like kind of gives off, and also how to make people feel comfortable. A big part of my job is sort of being this like almost like a therapist or something, like, and a big part of what I love too is people saying like, oh, you made me feel so comfortable, or this was so easy. And I think that you have to meet people where they're at, to kind of bring out that natural essence to allow people to feel comfortable, and especially people of color. Like the camera has not always been in the lens, and like the gaze of a camera has not always been like turned on us for the right reasons. And
Right.
during quarantine, I watched like this really awesome documentary actually, which I should watch again, called Through a Lens Darkly. So anyone watching, definitely recommend you guys check that out. It just was really great to kind of give some context to like, in this country alone, just the way that Black people have been photographed since like before we were able to have like the autonomy to like capture ourselves the way that we decided that we needed to. And Frederick Douglass, people like Frederick Douglass, and I'm gonna say either Harriet Tubman or Sojourner Truth were two people who like understood how important it was to be photographed and to be seen in like a righteous way or a good way or like a way that wasn't demeaning or like, you know, like disrespectful or like fake. Like people would literally like stage things to make black people look like sillier and dumber and worse. So all that to say, I'm so honored to like have this tool and this mechanism that I can use and always just trying to find the beauty in things, to find like the reality of things. And I'm always learning. I'm always a student and always working on it. But yeah, God willing, portraiture and photojournalism will be what I continue to kind of um, build a legacy of being a photographer for.
Speaking of focusing on photojournalism, you captured some beautiful shots in the summer during the racial justice movement that was sparked by the death of George Floyd. Tell us what that experience was like, capturing those stories and the events that you saw unfolding on the streets at that time.
It was, yeah, it was an incredibly heavy moment, and I just felt like I needed to do something differently, you know, and this sadly was not the first time it's happened, and we've even seen after that it was not the last time it's happened, like, you know, there's been, like it literally has happened again, just, like, in the past couple months since after he passed, and I just felt like I wanted to not even wanted to, I just knew I had to do something differently. I just didn't it didn't sit right in my spirit to just, like, be sitting at home and knowing that there were ways that I could like act, even if it was just me as a one person. So my sister, my brother, and I, we planned to go to a protest in Harlem, and we took a while to leave our house, and so we missed it. But like, we ended up meeting up with a friend, and we like Ubered to Brooklyn. We ended up marching for hours, and that was like one of the first nights of like that last week of May was when things were kind of really starting up.
Mhm.
Um, and I like brought my camera naturally, but I wasn't there necessarily to photograph. I was there more as like a protester for sure. But naturally, like of course I'm gonna bring my camera. So I was, you know, I was like in and out of like protesting and like photographing, but there were moments where, you know, I would kind of just instinctively like pick it up and then like put it down. Um, but yeah, that was really it was really powerful to me. I was out for a couple days. I can't remember how many, but across like the next few days, I was so inspired to see people who were going out like every day and continuing to fight and push. And I was grateful to be able to like have people look at the work that I was doing, and specifically it was like the captions I was sharing around the work. Like I decided to be like more vocal about the images because I was feeling a lot of things. I was like seeing a lot of things, like you know, the rioting, the looting, like things being burned, people like cursing cops out, people running, like people being tear gassed. Like I'd never like been in that position before. I'd never put myself in that situation before. And so it was a lot of like thinking I was doing. And then, like I said, to come home and then like, you know, not just experience it there or just like experience it like through like recording things on my phone, but then to sit and like look at those images on my computer as I was editing and stuff, it just made for a lot of like thoughts. So yeah, it was really powerful. So yeah, I was just grateful to be able to use something I love, which is photography, to share an opinion and my voice and thoughts. And if that inspired or compelled one or two people to do something, which it did, people would ask me like, oh, you know where the protests are happening, and blah blah blah, and like people were sharing things to their stories. Like I got like the most shares and sends on that like ever. Like there were like 600, 400 shares. People were sharing things and be like, yo, read her caption or like watch her video, watch this video. So that was cool. And then a couple publications hit me up to also work with them and shoot for them, which was also cool. But first and foremost, I definitely was there as like a Black woman before I was there as a photographer, which I was really clear about also when I was working. I was like, I'm not just here for like your publications agenda and like for your editors to check some things off their list. Like, you know, I have to do this with integrity or I'm not going to do it at all.
So, after having that experience, as a photojournalist, do you see yourself continuing to capture more stories or to focus on more stories that capture either iconic moments in history around Black culture or icons in Black culture? I know in your body of work, you've also had the opportunity to shoot the incredible women who were behind the Self Made series on Netflix that was centered around Madam CJ Walker, who's such a critical part of American history as an entrepreneur and a great icon for the Black community. Do you see yourself continuing to use your craft to capture more moments and icons centered in Black culture?
Absolutely, absolutely. While I don't ever want to feel, and let me just make sure I use my words really precisely here. I never want. I don't think anyone should ever be pigeonholed because of their race or like gender, and I kind of don't like that a lot of times people will use like, the black female photographer or black photographer umbrella to like kind of like just like loop me into places. So that's happened, and that may continue to happen. That is who I am, but I want to be respected as a photographer who takes good pictures. I am a black woman. I am a woman. Um, and the ways that I see the world naturally are informed by who I am, like, like period, and my experiences. And even both of us were both black women, but if you were a photographer, your life, your experiences, who you are would dictate, you would see the beauty in different things, and I would see the beauty in different things, and that's fine. So while I'm adamant on just making sure that people don't just try and like throw me into these like, these these brackets that like, I don't know, like people just sometimes can be a bit irresponsible with the ways that they like think about that stuff, which I don't like. Um and I don't know if I'm really being clear because I'm trying to like
Yes. So you're trying to say that you see yourself doing more of this work for sure, but you don't want to be pigeonholed. You want to be recognized as a photographer who creates great work in general.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think anyone should be pigeonholed, you know what I mean?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So there's that. But at the same time, I love who I am. I love what that represents. I love what people who look like me have done in this world, who have come and done, and like and the way that that black people have been liberated through some of us deciding to like help each other, like literally like bringing each other up. That's actually how like slavery stopped. That's actually how like segregation stopped. Like, we literally had to do it for ourselves because other people were not going to do it for us, honestly. And so for me, being able to use my platform, my voice, and be who I am, taking pictures the way I take them. If someone needs to see a Cardi B picture to be led to my work, to see the protest photo, to see, black woman behind like a Netflix series, so be it. If that's what is supposed to happen, that's what's gonna happen. So that's sort of how I feel about that. To answer your question, I definitely absolutely want to continue to be tasked with doing those kinds of things. I think I'm so humbled by seeing black excellence, any kind of excellence really, but specifically because in this country historically, if it wasn't if like I said, if it wasn't for people like Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman helping liberate people and show them like, you can have freedom in this way, you can make money in this way, you can do this, you can educate yourself, all these things, like we would not be, you honestly wouldn't be sitting here in the positions that we're in respectively, honestly. And so I'm just really blessed that my parents, they came here as immigrants with a goal. My dad was a PhD student, like at NYU, which was amazing in the 90s. They were able to put me in a good school. I was blessed enough to have the financial aid to get through school. And now, I have a college degree and education. I can communicate and I can speak well and I can assert myself and I can think. All those things are important. And I hope to continue to use those skills that I've gotten, combined with my love for photography and my work, to be in the rooms where I can be on a set and be like, no, we need to photograph people this way. We need to show them here. We need to do this, So I hope to continue to get all of the bags and all of the jobs that are in that world, in that space. I think I'm most inspired by that as well, honestly. Like being on that set, specifically the self-made set for the Netflix show, when the woman who we photographed was a great great granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. That was really amazing just to see that and be like, wow, like that's so cool. And she's also Madam CJ's historian.
Mhm.
And then everyone else who was there, they'd worked really hard and they'd done their time, they put their time in, and now they got to be photographed and get their makeup done and be beautiful. And I was so excited to just see them. They're not really the people who are usually in front of the camera, they're usually behind it. So I was excited to show them in that way and so beautifully. And I'm happy. So I'm so happy with the way those images turned out as well. And the way the show turned out as well too.
All right. So now you're represented by an agency.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you what some of the main benefits are of having an agency represent you. Thinking back to when you started, those days when you had to navigate on your own without having that, how have things changed now that you have an agent?
Yeah, that's a great question. The main ones for sure are just having the support. Honestly, this year has been really crazy, and this is the year that I started working with my agent. And just her knowledge of production, her knowledge of the industry, her efficiency is just I would not be able to do half the stuff on my own. And while like a lot of the connections and the inquiries and like the assignments come from reputation or clout or who knows me or whatever, being able to just loop her in and just know she's gonna ask the right questions and break things down, and she has her way of doing things. I have looked back, just at these past like 9 months and been, dang, like I don't know how this like would have gotten done. Like the Netflix series, the Netflix shoot was a great example of that. Having to outsource different people. We shot in LA, and like I don't live in LA. I'm from New York. So just her knowledge of who's out there and just being able to research and figure out who needs to be on set to help me get this done and do that. And then just conversations that she can have alleviate a lot of my stress and anxiety. I don't have the energy, honestly, always to like be on calls and like talk to people. Like I actually want to just show up and do the work. I want to be on calls sometimes for sure. And I love that part of being an entrepreneur, being able to like communicate and talk, especially from a creative standpoint and not just a business one.
Mhm.
But I'm so grateful that yeah, like she can have the tougher conversations, and it's just a really great like kind of in between middleman for information. And she and I, were continuing to get to know each other. It definitely was difficult at first for me. I'm pretty stubborn. I was doing things kind of on my own for a while, so I wasn't necessarily willing to release a lot of that freedom. And I didn't understand a lot of like the way that an agent and a photographer's like dynamic is supposed to work, maybe. But I think that when you decide to get representation, if you decide to get representation, it's just about knowing that at the end of the day, you should be doing what works for you. There have been times where I've had to be like, yes, this is the way things are typically done, but like I want to see this and I need to know, like that will make me feel more comfortable. And just having the courage, honestly, to stick up for yourself when necessary, to have tough conversations when necessary, and just doing it with respect and with love. That's all it really is. But yeah, I'm overall really grateful for her and I love her. She's honestly the best.
So, speaking of navigating on your own, for those photographers who are just starting out and are new to the game, how would you best advise them to navigate and to step into a room and be able to advocate for themselves?
That's a good question. I think that like the more you just do it wrong, the more you learn to do it right, honestly. Um, it just really depends on like where you're coming from. Some people are a bit more business savvy, some people are a bit more like a bit less business savvy. There are people who I know who are like 19 and 20, still in school, literally still in person, getting amazing opportunities and doing really cool things. That happens, and I always wonder how people figure things out based on where they're at. When things kind of started up for me, I was already college educated. Like I knew how to like write emails and communicate. I wasn't familiar with contracts really, and I had to start reading them a bit more and like skimming them and understanding them. So I just was sort of learning as I went. But in general, a big part of it was again going places, being myself, like showing who I was, and people like wanting to work with me anyway. I remember people asking me, do you have a rep or do you have an agent before I had one? And me being like, no, like, and feeling like, oh man, does that look like unprofessional or does that feel like, I don't know, like juvenile or whatever? But, I don't think, especially in the arts or as an entrepreneur, that there's a right or wrong way to do things. I think it's just your way. And if it works for you, you have to just stick to it and be and be honest and confident about that. So yeah, there's not really the right or wrong way. I think people should give themselves a break, allow themselves to figure it out. Don't be afraid to be honest about like if you know or don't know something. We're all human beings at the end of the day. Whether you're behind a certain email address with your company or you have a fancy signature with wherever you work it's still a person. So I would encourage people to if you don't know something to ask. And that's why it's also important to continue to build networks of people. There were so many times where I've had to be like, hey, can I call you about this thing? Like, how much should I charge for this? And there's always that adrenaline rush and the anxiety of, oh, did I do this right or wrong? But, when I look back, I had to have those kinds of not sure moments to get to the moments of now I know what I'm talking about. Now I know what I'm doing, what I'm saying. And also now I have someone who can help do all that stuff for me. So yeah, this is life, guys. You literally have to learn as you go. Like that's the whole point.
Yeah, trial and error is such a huge part of being an entrepreneur. Did you have any key mentors who helped to guide you?
Kind of. I always joke about how remember when the term mentor became such a thing? I feel like it was so trendy. People were just like saying they have a mentor just because they think it's cool to say that. And that used to really bother me. But I don't know. I wouldn't I had like people who I felt like were mentors to me, but I don't even now like I can't like honestly say like this is my mentor. Like there's not someone who I check in with and talk to, and like I don't have that, at least not yet. But there were people who were there for me and wanted to see me win, and saw my drive and saw my like the brightness in my eyes and just how excited I was to just do things. Definitely the person who I spoke about, who worked at Atlantic, who gave me the opportunity to work with Cardi, was someone who I consider like a mentor, for sure. Probably more so than anyone else.
So, for a new photographer who's just starting out and they're trying to establish themselves, build their brand, and get their work out there, what are the top three tips that you would give to them right now?
I would say first, like, make sure your stuff is airtight. Like, I think a lot of people really want to be photographers and really feel like, well, I have a camera and I take a lot of pictures, so where are my opportunities? But like, you have to make sure you're doing good work. Seriously, like, ask people their opinions, like, ask the right people their opinions. And I think one thing I really want to start doing is like helping and giving like kind of portfolio reviews and stuff. Because I love speaking about photography and just like the way I feel it is so it's like on this emotional level, but also a technical level, and I think that that's how like my stuff works. I think people love it because they feel the work, but then I think because of the technical soundness of it, that's what allows it. Like that's what allows the creativity to flow. Like look around at the things that you like and what people are producing, and look at like the highest levels of like the way that photography is being disseminated and see like what people are doing and like compare and look and when museums open back up and when galleries open back up you should be going there, you should be looking at work, you should be seeing it, you should be watching things. I was definitely immersed in a lot of great work, like I said before, even with Tumblr. I think that really actually was a huge part of why I was able to start making work that I thought was good, and then by extension, people thought was good. I would say that. I would say like don't feel entitled to anything. Like I think a lot of people, like I said, think like because I do this and because I have this, I should be getting this, and like that's not how it works. And that energy comes off. Like honestly, if you are requesting opportunities and you are reaching out with that mindset and it's not humble, if it's not like just willing to learn, willing to just like wait, willing to not hear back, like you kind of pick that up from people as well. So definitely staying humble, definitely not feeling entitled, and also just like not being hard on yourself. People work for a year and have like big breaks. People work for 10 years and have big breaks. Some people maybe never get those big breaks, but like again, I think if you really believe and understand that what's meant to be yours is already yours and like will happen, that kind of like acceptance in and of itself like will allow for like the universe to just let things flow a lot better, you know, but versus you being stressed out about, well, you know, I just finished college and like I want to be a photographer, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, do what you can do, work as hard as you can work, take care of yourself. But it is dangerous to get so caught up in like what you think things should be and like how you think things should work. I remember that happened to me or started happening to me when Instagram like was starting to be a thing. Just I would look to my left and right and I'd be like, oh man, like this person's getting this opportunity and they're doing this. And like I feel like my work is so good and I work so hard, but I still was creating and I still was doing stuff. And eventually, you know, it happened. I remember I still have like the flyer of like me being like headshots for $30. Like I made like like this like flyer thing when I was in college. It was like a little hustle, but yeah, those are my kind of main advices. Just like, you know your SHIT, you know, and be confident in that. Um, don't feel entitled and don't feel like, you know, like you have to get something or like you are owed anything. Just being humble and then just yeah, just working hard and like being patient with yourself. I think accepting things is really important. And again, like I'm 25, which is like still relatively young, but like I've been shooting for like a little over 10 years and professionally for about 4. So I know I can say this from a place of confidence, but like trust me, like
Well,
seriously,
you put in your 10,000 hours.
I put it. Yeah, I did. I really did. So I'm like, trust me. Like seriously, the sooner you feel that and accept that, you know, continue to network, continue to be in the right rooms, continue to like, you know, half the things I do are because of people who like like know me and who believe in me. And you know, like I said, it's just a domino effect. So you just need that kind of like one opportunity, well, 1 or 2 opportunities, and then you just need the consistency. But you have to make sure that you are sound like in here and up here. Otherwise, even if you get that opportunity, even if you get that moment, like you know, it may not sustain itself. So one day at a time, though, for sure.
That's such great advice. And as you progress in your career, who is your dream client?
It's funny whenever I get this question, I'm always just like, honestly, I would love to like shoot the Obamas. Like I'm obsessed
Ooh,
with Black
that's
excellence,
a good one.
and they're just so brilliant. And like, you know, I want to shoot more iconic. Like I want someone who, you know, someone who's like, even to me feels like a reach. Like, you know, you know, something like that. Like that's really like the pinnacle. I've like said Beyonce before, of course, obviously, but she's like also so photographed and like so photographed so beautifully too that like that would be a lot of pressure. But you know, definitely manifesting that as well. But I think the Obamas are kind of like up there. Like they are like the epitome of like Black excellence to me and that creativity and awesomeness just in the ways that they live their life. And I actually photographed Sasha Obama and Cardi B and Offset backstage at like a festival 2 years ago, and the picture went viral, which was pretty cool.
Well, you're almost there.
I'm almost there. Yeah, I almost got in trouble for that. I think though. I think like but it was such an awesome moment and so cool. Someone who I know who works on Cardi's team is someone who shared that image. And I remember being like, oh my God, like I thought we weren't supposed to share this, but I'm actually happy that it was out in the world. And also just knowing that like the Obamas, like they definitely saw that picture, like for sure. So like you know, I'm halfway there.
All right, so we're putting that out there into the universe. Flo Ngala shooting the Obamas in 2021. It's gonna happen.
Doesn't it sound nice? Doesn't it just roll off your
It
tongue?
does. I can't wait to see those images.
Yeah, me too, girl.
So, as a creator and as a photographer, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be um being someone who being someone who did things in like her own way and was herself and was like still really good. Like, I want people to look at my images. And I think I already like feel that now, but I want people to look at my work and be like, wow, that's a really, really good photograph. That's what I care about. Really good work. That's what I'm most inspired by. Like at the end of the day, it's like that's not disputable. Whether you're like an artist or any kind of entrepreneur, if I see a really good portfolio of investments or really good real estate if I see a really good marketing strategy, or if I taste a really good pastry from like a bakery owner, like whatever it is, I think that we love great things like human beings. Whatever your taste is, we can acknowledge like the good thing is a good thing is a good thing.
Mhm.
And so for me, I say, a good photograph is a good photograph is a good photograph. And so I want to be able to continue to create really great work that isn't just loved and respected because of like who I'm becoming or who I'm photographing, but because it's like a good picture. It's just, I don't think people always understand how important it is to just create something powerful, something strong. You know, you look at like people who are creating at the highest levels of their careers. Things like I was just talking about Beyonce, but like when she did like the Netflix homecoming video and like did that series, like she didn't have to do all that for Coachella, but she went there and she did that. And that was an amazing thing. And we could all look at it and be like, wow, look at this greatness. Look at this like example of like being well thought out and doing things right. So I want to continue to like internalize and like create from that place of excellence. And then I want people to be like, well, who took this? And they'll see like a blonde girl with braids from Harlem whose parents are from West Africa, and be like, oh wow, you know what I mean? I think people need to see like this kind of representation behind the highest forms of image making. So I want my legacy to be that, honestly. And I want to empower young people. I want to empower young girls. I want to empower young boys. I want to empower Black people, or young Black people, because growing up, I didn't see that for myself in this way. And so I'm mostly grateful, honestly, that like, I'm like a figure skating photographer, like African figure skating photographer. It's just like, it is what it is. And I appreciate my experiences, and I'm so thankful to my parents for putting me in the places and spaces that they did for me to continue to like, find myself. But yeah, I think I'm on my way to that. I do some like pretty cool self-portrait work too. So sometimes my face is like in my work and in my images, but a lot of times it's not. And I think I need to get back into doing self-portraits, and just like seeing myself in front of my camera, also being behind the camera, like playing with that is really interesting. I think all photographers and all people honestly should I think all photographers should photograph themselves, and I think all people should like be photographers. I think everyone, like, because of this, like there's no excuse anymore, honestly.
And that's how you began honing your craft originally. You did a lot of self-portraiture.
Yeah, yeah, because I didn't have Cardi B to shoot, or like Busta Rhymes, or recently I just shot like Sarah Jessica Parker, which was
Oh,
so
that's
cool.
amazing.
But yeah, that's how I practice. So I had, like you said, like to your point about 10,000 hours, I had all that time to just like be by myself in my room or on my roof, or like just alone and like learning. And I think that was a huge part of like my progression as well, honestly. So I'm really thankful for being able to like do that with photography, and seeing myself in that way was really important. So yeah, but in general, like I said, that's what I want my legacy to be. Just for people to understand that like it doesn't look like just like an old white dude, or like, like that's not what photography is. That's not what it should ever just been. But I'm inspired by some old white people, I will say. But I also want to be inspired by some like young, like popping Black girls too, So I'm really happy that photography has become something that more people have access to, and I pray that it will continue to be that way.
Are there any particular photographers who inspire you or whose work has influenced you?
Um, okay, I always say like Gordon Parks, because that was just one of the first people whose work I saw. He's a Black man. He was a photographer. He's a legend, honestly. Definitely look him up if you're not familiar. Um, I was super inspired by him when I was in school. He was the first person whose work I looked at. Like I cried over. Like I looked at a picture and I cried, and I didn't know that photos could make me feel like that until I like saw his work. And then someone else I say is who comes to mind right now is this guy Kato, who works with P Diddy or worked with P Diddy, and he started off as like their personal photographer, and then like kind of just started taking these really really iconic photos of like, you know, the people who like P Diddy would be around. You know, obviously there's like the Jay-Z's and like the Drakes and like the Beyoncé's, and I just love how clean his photos are. He does a really good job at taking just like really sharp, clean images, and I think that he is super talented. And he's like, I don't know, like my age or whatever. I think he like has a job at Revolt now, like doing something like corporate with them. But he started off kind of like doing like just like a family photography, and I really respect his work. But yeah, those are two people who come to mind. But there's obviously so many, so many. Yeah.
And I'm sure you're probably like on the list of inspiration for a lot of photographers. And I want to say thank you so much again for taking the time to join us to share your journey, and looking forward to seeing you like fly and continue to soar.